Cool. So now we'll add the username, email, and password to this. Uh, assuming, what was that? I think it's going. Should be good. String, and let's see here. String, lost that one. So much for copying. Cool. And then, of course, from here, we're going to want the usual getters and setters. Generate, getter, and setter. Select all of them. I'll have to think about the password one if we want a getter for that, if we want to do something different. But for now, I'm just going to do a blanket getter and setters for all. And then we will also generate a constructor for all. And very good. So let's see here. Now we need to render the add user form. So let's go ahead and jump over to the user controller. We're going to add a post mapping, I believe. No, I think we're on get right now. This is a get mapping. And this is at user/add. So I only need add here because we have this thing up here. So from here, the public string and then the name. And this will return under templates /user add. So I think it's something like user /add. And so now we have enough changes that we should be able to test our changes. So I'm going to run this. There's nothing in here, so we won't see much. But I'm just going to refresh this nonsense. And then I need to check at /user /add. Okay, we don't have an error. We have nothing here. But if we really wanted to see whether or not it actually worked, we can go to the inspector tab and we can see we have some HTML here. We have our title thing that was part of our time leaf stuff. And that matches up with our add HTML. We just have the title and an empty body and stuff like that. So this is working as expected so far. Cool. Back to the directions. Let's see if I can keep things moving here. Within add, we're going to create a form that accepts inputs for each of the user class properties. Right, so that was username, email, and password. And I believe we also will need the verify. So let's see how fast we can write this form. So it's going to be form. No, it's going to be form, and then the method will be post. And then in here, we'll have an input. And it will have a name field. And it will have a type field. And for this first one, it'll be a text. I also need an ID field for the label, at least how I add the labels. There's different ways to do labels. And so for this one, this will be user name. And it will have a label, which is 4, and then I'll put whatever I have in the ID field, which in this case is also username. Then the label will be username. And then if I want to keep things vertical, I can add a BR, which is breaks the line. Or I could do it with CSS, but in this case, we're going for efficiency. So the next thing we need is a password, and the label will be, we'll do email next. Password, and then, and what's really cool here is if we change the type here to password, it will format it in the browser as if we're putting in a password. And then we will need our email field. Email. For the longest time, I feel like no one knew how to spell email. Did you capitalize the M? Did you capitalize the E? Did you use a dash? But I think we're closer to a consensus on it. I don't know. And then lastly, almost lastly, we need our verify password. And the ID is the same as this up here. The name will be verify. If we name it anything else, we're going to have issues when we use the code that they give us later on. And then the type will also be password. So we wrote a bunch. We also need a submit button. So it's just an input with type submit. I'm not sure if it's going to care about the self-closing tags, but I'm going to add them because that's whether it cares or not. It's a best practice. Let's refresh. And sorry, brain has. There we go. So now we have username, email, password, and verify password, and then our submit button. So at this moment, if we put stuff in here, submit, we get an error page, and that's okay. It's just we haven't coded the next part. So let's jump back over to the directions. So we have, just verify real quick, the password verify inputs, make sure they're not visible. We've done all these things. This also mentions we're going to do a lesson soon about server-side validation, which is cool. Let's see here. Within the controller, we're going to create a handler for the method with the signature. User controller. And we will do at post mapping. And I'll make this app. And here we have our signature. A lot of these are not imported yet, so I will do Alt-Enter to import them. Sometimes it'll give you options. Usually the top option is most likely to be correct. And then so the next thing we need to do is where it gets a little bit more challenging. We need to check that the verify parameter, this additional field that wasn't caught in the model binding, matches the password within the object we created with model binding. And so there's more to it than just that. We're going to write code that just sees that they're similar or not similar. So at the bottom, I'm just going to say return for now redirect. And then here, I'm going to do an if statement. If we will say user.getPassword. When I first was messing around with this, I did doesn't equal string verify right here. It didn't like that. I'm assuming it has something to do with matching object types. And so what I had to do was something called dot equals. My cursor's acting weird. Dot equals verify. And so from here I can say system out match, and then if they don't match, I'll do else. Let's refresh, and we're going to just use our console to see if they match or not. So now that that's loaded up, go back to this page. And I'll say 1, 2, 3, and I'll say 1, 2, 3, 4. Submit. And then we can see here that the passwords do not match. Okay, that was half of the test. Let's just make sure that it knows how to match them. So we'll go back to add. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, submit. Let's check the console, and they match. So our if statement is working. That's a good place to be right now. So for post mapping. So now that we have a way to verify, do they have a verified password? Let's see what the next part of this is. From here, let's see. Verify it matches the password. If it does, render the user index.html form. If they don't match, render the form again, which will be process in itself. So if they do match, we'll return redirect to, let's see here. I think just a normal redirect will send them back to user, so that's good. And then if they don't match, we actually don't need an else statement if we remember how returns work. So if they don't match, we will send them back to the add page. I'm making an assumption with that redirect logic. Let's test it out. I'm going to start with something that does not match. It should send me back to this page. Oh, I didn't do a full email address. There we go. Oh, I got it almost right. It sent us back to add, so we just need to add one more thing here. There we go. Okay, we'll verify that it's working. User add. Okay, it's working. It sent us back to the page, and then if we put in passwords that match, it should send us back to just the home user page. So I'll make sure that these match. Please don't. Submit. And it sends us back to the home page, which it looked like there's a problem because we have this error page, but we just haven't created it yet, so we're going to say that that error is a good thing. Cool. So moving forward, let's see here. Once registered, we want the user to access the form, selecting their spa services. In user index.html. Should access the form, selecting the spa services in user. Add a thref, take it back to the root path. Okay, we can do that. So we need to create a link. Excuse that. We need to create a link in index.html. We are also going to need to return it from our controller. So I don't know if it mentioned that explicitly, but we will do that. Get mapping at root. We'll say public string, and then we'll just call this, just call it user. Is that fine? Then we will return user. Let's just see if this works. We got to put some text in here that says test. Refresh. Let's see. I'm gonna need to reload the page. Cool. So that sent us to the user page and return test. And so now what we need on this page is a link that is going to send us back to the home page. So I believe there's some special timely syntax for this. I will write it how I normally write HTML. Which I think we can just say something like that. And then we'll say return to home page. I don't think this will work, but it might work. So we're going to try it out. refresh the user page once it loads, return to home page. It worked. I thought we would need special time leaf syntax for that, but that just sent us back where we needed to go. Let's see here. We could add the special time leaf syntax in front of this. It's not going to hurt. If the form is re-rendered, the password is not verified, we should let the user know that their form was not properly submitted. I'm assuming that this is referring to where we're entering in our password. That's the form they're talking about, not the one at the root page. So let's go ahead and figure this number 2 section out. We need to basically alert the user, hey, your passwords didn't match. That's why we didn't let you proceed. Basically provide like almost like an error for the user. So from user controller, let me think about this real quick. So we have our user. I want to do something like model dot add attribute user. I'm a bit concerned that when it redirects, I'll lose that, but we'll find out. So let's test it real quick here. So from add, I'm just going to do a quick h1, and this will be text equals user dot username. Let's see that real quick. So I'm going to refresh the page. No, wrong one. Let's see here, I have an error. Username cannot be found on null. Right, so if we're loading it up and it doesn't have that. This might be a bit much, and I don't know if it'll work to just test one thing, but I'm going to say something like th if user. Might be thinking too. I'm sorry. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. And then in here, I don't know if this will work. It's just an idea, like just to do like check if there's a user at all. But if not, we won't do the next part of it. I'll say well, it didn't break anything, but it also didn't quite work. I feel like I'm missing. There's a bit of syntax that is going over my head at the moment. Let's see here. Let me get grounded again. The directions. It's not properly submitted. Add attribute. Have an error attribute like. Oh, I think I know what it is. And this has got me in the past before. In my controller, I never named the attribute. I just passed it in and assumed it would know what it is. So we'll say user. I know I've definitely made that mistake before. All right, let's refresh. Refresh here. gonna do something real quick. I'm wondering if the moment I can get away with getting rid of that. Property username cannot be found on null. I feel like I'm missing something here. Any thoughts from the group? Yes. You may be right. I wonder if I can get away with something like this. It'll just be add. So we don't need a redirect. Just add to add. Closer, let's see. I'm sorry? Right, because the template does not exist at just add. It exists at, thank you. Let's go ahead and refresh. All right, so now we'll add our fields to this. Okay, that's closer. So at least it's not crashing yet, or crashing at the moment. And then we have our, oh, I removed it. This is the same, I'm assuming, yeah, username cannot be found on null. Let me see here. Any thoughts on to what I might be missing? I feel like it's something small, maybe. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And that is, I guess, the goal. I was trying to just test being able to add data to the form with the model. So for just to verify I could with this add attribute user thing. What we could do is just a temporary thing, as we say, something like this. I can just reference Okay, so that works. I know there's a way to do it. How I was trying to do it, I'm just missing a detail. But to explain what happened, I instead of passing in the user model object, I just passed in a string, which was uh, right here, user.getUsername. I really do believe there's another way to do it. I'll look it up and post it in general later. But for now, at the very least, we've got to the point where we're able to verify and then add the stuff back. I don't think we'll make it to the end, but the last thing that we're really missing is using, of course, adding the error element, which we didn't quite do, but using that method of being able to add attributes to the form that we reloaded, and then just repopulating the different fields. And I'll just show one of them real quick here, which would be, we already have it most of the way, which is the username. We could just say, think value equals. I then get rid of this. I believe this should work. Yeah, so that worked. I was able to maintain the data. So anyways, yeah, sorry we didn't get through the entire thing. Hopefully this was still beneficial though. Thank you for sticking around. And if anyone wants to hang out for like 2 minutes, I'll show the JavaScript thing. But otherwise, have a great night. And yeah, good seeing you. Okay, so for the few of you who may be interested, I will show the JavaScript thing now. Sure thing. All right, cool. So we have our doggo chatbot, and if we click on the dog, Cat's Rules takes over. How is that happening? I'll just show maybe a brief overview of it. Close this. So the first thing we have is we have a JavaScript folder inside our static stuff, which we'll look at that in a moment. Inside of home, at the top, we are referencing that JavaScript folder, so that adds it to the HTML. And then we have styles, including some hacker cat styles that we're going to apply to it. So in the JavaScript, the first thing I have is something that waits until all the content loads, so I don't accidentally throw an error when I'm trying to reference HTML elements. The next thing I do is I get HTML elements by their ID, so I can reference them. And then I add an event listener. So this says if I click on that title HTML element I found, then we're going to execute all the code. And then that's all of the style changes that you see here. And then finally, I copy pasted this from the internet. This is the little circle thing tracking with the mouse. So that is it for the JavaScript portion. If y'all have any questions, let me know. But otherwise, I will shut this.